Welcome to Shaping E-commerce with Iron Plane. This is where we talk about e-commerce development, solutions, digital marketing, and all things e-commerce. Be sure to check out the description below each video to find additional resource links and show notes. We upload new videos each day. Please like and subscribe to our channel.
Welcome back to another episode of Shaping E-commerce with Iron Plane. I'm Tim Bucciarelli, the Director of Engagement at Iron Plane. And today I'm very pleased to be joined by Matthew Eisnor from Algolia. And if you've been in e-commerce for a while, you probably recognize that name. We'll dig into exactly why you recognize it and how important it is for e-commerce merchants to find out whether Algolia is a good platform for them in search and personalization. And hopefully you'll learn a lot more about it in this conversation. So Matt, thank you very much for joining us today.
Tim, thanks for inviting me on the podcast. I'm really excited to represent Algolia here today. So by way of introduction, my name's Matt Eisnor. I'm based here in the Boston area, and I lead Algolia's Global Alliances team. So for us, Alliances really comes in three parts. First part is our ISV partnerships. So those technologies that Algolia can complement or support Algolia. Our services partnerships, that part of the team that focuses on folks like Iron Plane. And then our cloud partnerships, where we primarily play in the AWS and Azure space with possibly GCP coming later next year.
Great. And for this audience, we're really targeting e-commerce merchants, mid to emerging enterprise, as I like to say, but really any e-commerce merchant who tunes in and is looking for information about various technologies to consider. And so Algolia, if you could just give us a quick nutshell of, why a merchant would look at Algolia, what goals does Algolia help them achieve, and why is it different than what else is out there in the market?
Yeah, let me address 2 points in that question. One is which markets and segments we cover, but then also what is Algolia and why should a merchant care? So Algolia at its core is really a search and discovery product. We are a complement to commerce or to a content management system or to a CDP. Algolia doesn't exist in isolation. So what we find is that many of our customers, regardless of their size, whether we're talking about SMB or commercial or enterprise, at some point they may outgrow the native search features within their e-commerce platform. And when that happens, we will typically get a call. They will start looking at search projects. They might do an RFI or an RFP, and the phone rings. But we are primarily a complement to commerce. And then just to talk a little bit about our customers. So we have about 17,000 active customers using the platform right now. And those customers include SMB, commercial, emerging enterprise, and even some Fortune 100. We made a big announcement about 18 months ago. Our largest customer to date at that time, we had just signed up Walgreens. So if you look at walgreens.com today, that search and discovery experience is entirely powered by Algolia.
So a lot of capabilities there. And, if you could touch on a little bit about what's behind the technology, again, why is it a little bit different than what maybe, as you said, the native search functionality that might exist in an existing e-commerce platform?
Mm-hmm. So before I get into that specific answer, let me talk a little bit about why search matters and why we see merchants outgrowing their search capability. Because I think for many years, search was an afterthought. And the reality is search is the hardest working piece of technology on an e-commerce website. So just to throw a few stats at the gang here as they're listening, and these are Forrester stats. We've worked with Forrester a number of times on research that they do for us. And what Forrester tells us is that about 43% of B2C customers, when they land on that site, they go to search first. They immediately go to the search box and they start looking for the thing that they're interested in. They're mission shopping. When you look at a B2B website, that number goes from 43 all the way up to 92%. And when I first read that statistic, I actually asked our team to go back to Forrester to double check it because I couldn't believe it. But we all know that B2B customers are very, very focused, very mission focused. And so 92% of those customers go to the search box first. So if that is true, there is a significant amount of your traffic going to search. And if they land on a bad experience, you're going to see conversion rates go down. And another stat that relates to this is McKinsey tells us that a customer will stay on the site for about 2 to 3 seconds before they make their official decision. Am I going to stay and put more time into this, or am I going to abandon and go somewhere else? So if that's true and it really is just 2 to 3 seconds, then that means 1 to 2, maybe 3 quick searches could happen prior to that customer abandoning. So if we take the total percentage of traffic, which is high, 43% for B2C, 92% for B2B, and if we know that maybe we have an opportunity to excite them with 1 or 2 searches, search, like I said, it's the hardest working functionality on the site. So now, how does Algolia come to be within this dynamic? Algolia originally started, we're about a 10-year-old company now. Some would call us a startup. I would say that we're squarely within the scale-up phase at this point. But we started about 10 years ago as a solution to mobile search challenges. And because the company was focused exclusively on mobile search at the time, we architected the technology in a very unique way. And this starts to get to your question, Tim. So all of the processing that's done for Algolia, it's all done within RAM. And that's one of the reasons why we are so fast. That's also one of the reasons why we have data centers all over the world, so that the latency time between where the customer is and where that query originates to when it hits one of our servers and comes back, another reason why we're so fast, because we have plenty of data center coverage out there. Over time, we evolved from a mobile platform to really a generalized search platform that can take any content or information into our indices. So from an Algolia perspective, we are data agnostic. We don't care whether that data comes from commerce or PIM or CDP or CMS. Any data in almost any structure, we can take it into our index, we can quickly compress it, and we can deliver results from it.
So when I think about an e-commerce website, I think there are several elements when we talk about data, because there's, for example, the most obvious is product data. So you've got the product names, you've got maybe some synonyms or keywords, or you've got maybe 15 different properties associated with that, some of which are filterable, some of which you want to be searchable. And then apart from that, you have customer data. If they're logged in especially, you might have a little bit more data than you normally would if they were operating as a guest. And then you add to that transactional data. You have browsing data. You have kind of generalized browsing data across the entire population of the people who visit the website. So all of that strikes me as such a rich gathering of data that could be utilized to enhance the experience on the website for each individual visitor. Is it true that Algolia can tap into each of those, or are some of those areas a little bit more targeted by your tool?
The short answer is yes, but let me provide a little bit more detail. So the traditional search experience is typically powered by some of the things that you talked about. Either customer data, if they're authenticated and we know who they are, any content that's within the CMS, any content that comes to us from commerce or PIM or any other source. You started to talk about some of the clickstream event data that's available to us with modern analytics tools. That is also a source of inspiration for Algolia's search results. So one of the unique things about Algolia and where we can do some lightweight personalization, Algolia by no means is a personalization tool, but Algolia can get merchants part of the way there. So with an unauthenticated customer, if that client of ours is sending us events data, and if that data comes into the Algolia index, we can actually follow that clickstream data such that we understand intent for the most part of what that customer is shopping for. So for example, earlier this morning, I was talking to a prospect and they sit squarely within the golf space. Well, if I'm on that website, most of the time I am searching for men's apparel. But maybe this afternoon, my wife has a match and I am searching for a women's golf shirt. Well, if in the current session that I'm in, I can understand that I'm clicking on mostly women's apparel, when I search for red shirt, I'm going to base those search results on my current clickstream data in session, as opposed to my past purchase history. So that's where the power of clickstream data really comes in. And it's interesting, the new and unique innovative use cases that our merchants are coming up with to use that clickstream data to power search results.
Yeah, and it's interesting. In my own experience, I've also engaged with the Algolia search engine just as a visitor to websites, and I know that it's Algolia behind the scenes. It is super fast and it's super relevant. That being said, I feel like sometimes it's a little bit of a challenge to get the data right. Even the biggest websites out there, when you do searches, when you do filters, like it's a little bit of the garbage in, garbage out, idea. Like if the data is not accurate for the products, then the search results are not going to be accurate. Is that a challenge that you guys run into? Do you put the emphasis with your merchants to say, look, you got to have your data really accurate in order for this tool to really shine?
So it depends on how bad the data is. The data, regardless of its source, doesn't have to be perfect to get indexed by Algolia. And oftentimes the data that we get, it's not perfect, and that's okay. We don't have a sort of common format by which the data needs to be structured. When most of our merchants run into challenges, it's when the data is absent as opposed to the quality of that data. So that's where we want to run into challenges with customers. But we also have some customers who, here's a real example, I won't use the name, but they were really struggling getting their inventory data from their inventory management system back into commerce because of the structure of that data. Because of Algolia's processing horsepower that we had, that data made a first step to Algolia where we would index it, and then commerce would call Algolia to retrieve the inventory results. Not a typical use case. It was sort of a hack and a workaround while this particular customer was working through their data hygiene challenges. But we've seen people use our technology in unique ways like that.
That's interesting.
In the end, it benefited the customer, but it was really a workaround.
And so for merchants who are interested, many of those merchants will be already on an e-commerce platform. Is Algolia 100% platform agnostic, or are there platforms that are kind of out of the box, ready to go with existing integrations?
Yeah, two answers to that question. So one is, yes, we are absolutely agnostic. Whether it's commerce or any other data source, we don't care where the data comes from. But when we look at our 17,000 customers and how Algolia tends to be used as a complement to commerce, we see some gravity around 5 key platforms. And I'll list these in order. So Shopify is first, Adobe Magento is second, Salesforce BigCommerce is third, Salesforce Commerce Cloud is fourth, and Commerce Tools is fifth. Those are sort of our big 5. In addition to those big 5, we also see Spryker quite a bit. We see VTEX quite a bit. Seems like every time I turn around, I'm hearing more about VTEX and the great work that they're doing. And we see Elastic Path quite a bit as well.
Yep.
Also, I guess now I'm starting to list off all the commerce platforms. We do see
No, we'd be here all day if you were doing that.
I know. We do see quite a bit of SAP Hybris work coming our way as well. Especially with those B2B merchants who are just looking for a bit more than what Hybris can provide.
Yeah.
But just to look at those, those 5 platforms, I mentioned 17,000 customers. We have about 1,400 customers who choose to add us on top of Shopify, about 1,700 Adobe Magento customers who complement Magento with us, about 700 BigCommerce, 150 Salesforce, and somewhere around 50 Commerce Tools. That's how we sort of stack up against the 5 commerce platforms.
Okay. And for folks looking at search, they're probably going to come across several different potential solutions to their challenges. Um, are there some guidelines that you can give to them? Some distinctions about Algolia versus the competition, whether you name them by name, I don't care, but just like talk a little bit about the market, what people should be caring about, why Algolia achieves a certain, why 17,000 choose to go with Algolia. It seems like a pretty big number and pretty successful platform.
Yeah, we've had a lot of success to date, and especially quite a bit of growth over the past 2 years, which we fully expect to continue into this year. But if we look at the differentiators, the SaaS software space is incredibly dense right now. There's a lot of competition out there in the market. I think Chief Martech right now is tracking like 9,900 different SaaS software platforms that go all the way from MarTech through commerce, into the back end. It's really difficult to follow them all. And whether it's IronPlane or a very large global SI, nobody can understand the benefits and of each one of these platforms. So it's a really, really crowded space right now. And I think so too, to the point of your question is, search can be a bit crowded. So what differentiates Algolia from the competition? I think I need to start a little bit. I don't want to bore everybody on this podcast, but I think I need to start a little bit with the history of search. So search started with Lucene, and there are many Lucene-based open source search engines out there. Most people tend to think of Elasticsearch and Solr as sort of the two options, open source, where you can build what you want. Most tech search technologies, including Algolia as they evolved, also used Lucene, but they used it in a more advanced way, a bit more refined way. And that includes Algolia, Coveo, Bloomreach, SearchSpring, pick your favorite search platform out there. What we've seen over the past probably 5 to 7 years is the emergence of vector search. So this is different than keyword search. This is really about the long tail, where we start to really interpret a long search query. So men's dress shirt for formal event. That's an example of a long tail search query that keyword search cannot handle very well. As soon as the search query goes beyond 2 or even 3 words, keyword search starts to automatically fail. It's not what it was designed to do. So what vector search does is it starts to draw vectors between each of these words and draw comparisons between each one of these words. But because so many vectors need to be formed, vector search is very resource intensive, both from a compute standpoint behind the scenes and sort of time and latency, which is difficult for your user experience. So now here comes Algolia. With a recent acquisition back in Q4 of last year, Algolia acquired a company called Search.io, which was based in Australia. And they were really the leader in the vector search space. They have a vector search tool that's called Neural Search, and we're going to continue with that trademark and brand going forward. But what we now have with Algolia is all the best things about keyword search, because there are times when you need keyword search on your site, and then all the best of vector search, which we're calling Neural Search. And within a single API, we will give you both keyword and vector search. And whether the keyword search results or the vector search results are returned, all that happens on the back end. We will help the merchant decide which is the best result. And through some configuration that the merchants can amplify or decrease something, that's what will be returned to the website. So right now, that is the key differentiator for Algolia. And we are the only search platform right now that has this idea of hybrid search, both keyword and vector.
And you've come up with a way, or Neural Search has come up with a way to package it so that the resource intensivity of it doesn't slow things down for the end user.
Yeah. When you think about vector search, there are other products out there in the market. Pinecone is one. These are really good products, but the use cases tend to be a little bit limited because of the resource expense. And the more compute power we need, the higher the cost for that search result, which means the higher the licensing cost to the end customer. What Search.io did that nobody else has done is they figured out a way to compress these vectors into a binary. And don't ask me to go into more detail there. We're going to need the data science team to do that. But through this compression, and my simple example is just like a PDF compresses a file, so too does this hashing technique that Search.io came up with compress the vectors such that they become easier to query and less compute intensive, which lowers our infrastructure cost. And it's with those two things that we're able to offer to the market at scale at a price that's reasonable.
So I think that you may have already answered this sufficiently, but maybe a little bit more detail, I guess. Kind of the ideal client profile. Do you have any more that you could say, kind of who either you target or who you find coming to you most often?
Mm-hmm. So I mentioned earlier that we cover all segments within the commerce space. We have SMB customers, commercial, emerging enterprise, strategic, Fortune 100s. Our ideal customer profile, it tends to be in and around commerce, whether that's retail or not. About half of our 17,000 customers fall into the retail or commerce category in some way, shape, or form. We also do quite well within the media space because of the complexity of the data that needs to be searched, queried, and then searched and returned. We also have some significant benefit in the B2B space, because if you think of a B2B merchant, their products are very complex. So the product information is typically more robust. The product descriptions are typically more robust. Oftentimes there are PDFs or flat files associated with those products. We have a way to peer into those PDFs, index the information in it so that it's available to the search engine. There's oftentimes specifications as well, user manuals, things like that. We can consume all of that information so that with a single search, we can bring back federated results, whether it's from the PIM, a specification, a PDF, a user manual, whatever it might be. And I think media and B2B are two of our markets that will continue to accelerate this year. Through COVID, when all the B2B merchants really struggled, right? The B2B space, it tended to be on the road selling. When they had to jump into a digital model, we had a lot of B2B companies coming to us and saying, we have an e-commerce website, but nobody can find anything. Can you help? And the answer was yes.
Yeah. It's interesting. B2B, I think I can see the value. Really, really cool, especially as you describe reaching into those specification sheets and pulling out relevant data there. That's cool stuff. And
Tim, if I could just interrupt you for 1 second, because I talked about there's sometimes when you want to use keyword search, sometimes when you want to use vector search. Well, if you're searching for a part number, that's keyword search. You want to get back the right part number. You don't want to get a part back that's like the part number you put in. So there's always a reason for legacy keyword search. And that's very true in the B2B space. But if you think about long tail search within the B2B space, it could be electrical pump that doesn't overheat in hot weather conditions. That would be something that traditional keyword search typically couldn't find, but we can by drawing vectors between those different words, indexing that, and bringing the result back.
Now, I'm sure you expected a question like this, of course, these days with all the talk about GPT-3, GPT-4. When you talk about content searchability and discoverability, I understand that there are ways to make use of the the GPT-3 or 4 to digest existing data for particular environments and make use of that data. Is that something that you already are integrating or working with, or is it on the roadmap?
We are not integrating with it. The answer to your question, could you use ChatGPT to deliver search results? The answer is yes, of course you could. The problem with ChatGPT is it's very expensive to run. And it's very expensive from a compute perspective. And while it could be introduced to certain customers in some very specific use cases, we don't believe it can scale. it certainly can't support a customer's entire business. And then the other challenge, while we could deliver the right search results, there's no tooling or dashboard behind the scenes to allow a merchant to boost certain things or
Yeah.
bury certain things based on their individual needs, seasonality, sales, distressed inventory, promotions, right? So like for like, can it return the same result? Absolutely. Can it scale? Probably not. Does it have the tooling that a merchant needs to make it successful? No. It's a technologist dream. It's a merchant's nightmare.
Yeah. I I mean it's more of an interesting question. I think a lot of companies these days are really trying to think through all the different scenarios of how it might be used for enhancing or improving or supplementing existing technologies. And as you made very clear, sometimes it's a good candidate, other times not so good. So I think in this case, let's put this in the not so good at the moment category. So that's totally fine. Are there any differences in terms of the e-commerce platforms that you mentioned? Shopify, BigCommerce, Magento, Adobe, in terms of their ability to make use of the Algolia platform, or is it all kind of equal across the board?
So our plan by the end of this year is to have Algolia built, owned, maintained integrations into each one of those platforms. So currently we have an integration available for Salesforce, for Adobe, for Shopify, Commerce Tools. BigCommerce will come in the next 30 to 60 days, depending on when the product team is done. And we built those integrations and we want to own and maintain them because those platforms are so important to us. But to your question, is there a difference in the benefit that a merchant working on one of those platforms can get from Algolia? Not really. A Commerce Tools customer will not see a greater benefit from Algolia than a Shopify customer. It's two different calls to two different parts of the experience technology stack that just gets displayed on the site.
And I think a lot of our merchants are absorbing this information and they probably make this deduction themselves. But kind of what are the key KPIs that merchants might be looking to Algolia to help them improve?
So I was in the consulting world like you for more than 15 years, mostly in and around commerce in the retail space. And the reason why I came over to Algolia was because I was sort of tired of those long drawn out consulting projects that may or may not have an impact to revenue and the end customer's bottom line. We've all seen those projects that just drone on and on and on and never seem to finish. When Algolia reached out to me and they started talking about the results that they could have for retailers, I didn't believe them. And I actually spent a few days interviewing them to dig into their data to really understand what did they mean when they say they can have X% increase in average order value and conversion. So let me answer the question in this way. The other reason why I came to Algolia is how quickly Algolia can be implemented. So Algolia is implemented in days and weeks, not months and quarters. Even our most complex implementations might go on for 12 weeks. Most of them are done in 6 to 8 weeks. Many can be done in 2 to 3 weeks, depending on the merchant. Some developers in very small, discrete use cases have Algolia up and running within a few hours. So it depends, but the point is speed to value is something that Algolia also brings. One of the other reasons why I came over. So even with a base implementation of Algolia, the merchant will always see an immediate improvement in speed and relevancy. And with speed and relevancy, both average order value and conversion rate will go up almost immediately post-implementation. And because of that, what's interesting is we find many of our merchants get stuck at this sort of base implementation of Algolia, and they've checked the ROI box because whatever they committed to finance, they've hit that or exceeded it, and they don't continue to use more of the functionality and develop a more mature implementation of Algolia. And that's one of the things, that we love to work with somebody like Iron Plane on, is providing Algolia optimization services, advancing those customers up the maturity curve so that they really get the true value out of the platform. If they want to stop at that base implementation and move on to the next project, that's okay. But I would love to see them extract more value. To give you some real numbers here, so what does it mean to increase conversion rate and average order value? Lacoste is one of our marquee clients. There's a very robust case study on our website. Lacoste post-implementation for their search customers, those customers who came to search first, used search to put something into the basket, they saw a 37% increase in their search conversion rate. It's a big number.
It's huge.
They also saw their sales from search, as opposed to any other path. It might be just a traditional browse path or inbound from some sort of marketing channel. They saw their sales from search increase by 150%. That's one example. If we talk about search conversion rate, Decathlon saw a 50% increase in their search conversion rate. And Fendi, which is one of the LVMH brands, they saw an 80% increase in their search conversion rate. So
These
conversion
are good numbers.
Yeah, they are. And this is why when Algolia reached out to me to join the company, this is why I spent a couple of days interviewing them, because the numbers seemed too good to be true. And I wanted to dig into the data a little bit. And then, come back to something I said earlier. Search traffic is a tremendous amount of traffic on these sites. It's 43% for B2C customers and 92% for B2B customers. So if we're improving search conversion rate by that much for a significant portion of traffic, these are real material results.
Yep. So if, let's say a merchant has reviewed all of their options, they're considering Algolia, they want to understand kind of the packages available, the tiers, the pricing, and also, is it kind of a la carte in terms of functionality? Is it something where you can start out with everything all at once, or you take it piece by piece and grow in that kind of optimization path over time? If you could just kind of outline that, sketch that out a little bit, that would be helpful.
Yeah, to be honest, I think our pricing is probably a bit more complicated than it needs to be. And I think everybody at Algolia would admit the same thing. Our pricing is publicly available on our website, which is unique for us. If you want to input your search traffic and get an estimate on what your search cost would be using Algolia, those types of calculators are available on our site. We try to be as transparent as we can.
So it's based off of search traffic primarily, as at least at the base level?
It is. So there are a few different tiers to our licensing. If someone wants to come in with low usage and use Algolia on the site, there is a free version of Algolia that they can use until they exceed it. Then there is what we call pay-as-you-go. So I mentioned earlier, some developers will come to understand the technology, have a very specific use case. They need to implement something quickly. They can put Algolia on their credit card if they want, and they can be what we call pay-as-you-go. So we calculate the usage every month and then bill them at the end of the month. And then there are premium and committed plans, which are really designed for our large SMB, commercial, and enterprise customers. All of the Algolia pricing, regardless of the tier, free, pay-as-you-go, or committed, all of those pricing models are based on usage. So how many search queries are coming to one of our servers? That's what we consider usage.
Okay.
In some cases, and this is where our pricing gets complicated, because for Algolia, our biggest cost is the compute. It's our infrastructure. That's our primary cost. So usage is one way to utilize resource and infrastructure, but the storage and maintenance of records is another way. So with some very large B2B customers who have very prolific catalogs, sometimes it will be records-based pricing, but that's a very small percentage of the time.
And in terms of functionality, is it so based on search volume? Okay, but are there kind of components? You start out with basic components, and you can add like this more advanced components as you need, or is it you've got the Algolia world at your disposal, and it's just all going to be focused on your search volume?
So right now, Algolia offers two key products. One is search, and the other is recommend. Those are two separate products, two separate licensing arrangements, two separate costs. But within the search silo, whether we're talking about our dynamic re-ranking capability, which is run on AI that a merchant can control, whether we're talking about our personalization functionality, all of that is included in the base cost. If somebody wants to add recommend onto that, that's an additional cost.
Okay, got it. Got it. Okay, so we'll provide links. I mean, the website is easy enough as it is, but we'll provide links to that site in the show notes. Anything that we missed today, or anything in particular that you'd like to mention about Algolia to the merchants listening?
So one thing for the merchants that I didn't mention is I didn't talk about search queries in general, and whether we're talking about the head search queries, your top 100 search queries, or the long tail. Let me just take a moment on this.
Sure.
So generally speaking, if we look at 100, the total proportion of search queries that come to a website, the top 100 queries tend to be about 30% of all search traffic. And usually it's easy for a merchant to manually configure some of those search queries, right? It's only 100 perhaps. You can do direct synonym mapping. You can create business rules to boost some or bury others. So that's usually pretty manageable with the top 100. The top 1,000 queries represent about 55% of all search traffic. But then it's the next 45% that keeps merchants up at night. How do I manage this long tail? And that 45%, that long tail, can oftentimes be 50% of more of total revenue. But there's no way for a merchant to touch all of those long tail search queries. Oftentimes in a mid-size retailer, there will be tens of thousands of search queries that come in every month that are in that long tail that they can't manually merchandise. And this is where some of that AI capability comes in. And this is where the vector search capability comes in to automate that and take some of that burden off the merchant's shoulders.
So I think that it's pretty compelling, the data that you're sharing and the conversion rate improvements, the average order value improvements. I think that I think it seems to me like it's a no-brainer, and it's up to each merchant to evaluate whether they have the search volume and the resources available to invest in Algolia as a solution. But it seems clear to me that it may over time pay for itself if you've got the right numbers of volume. So I encourage folks to go out to the website, use the calculator, and put in your search volume and start to play around with numbers. What do you expect to see in the coming 2 to 3 years? If you're expecting your search volume to dramatically increase for one reason or another, maybe it makes sense to start talking about improving your search functionality today, so that down the road you're already on the road to paying it off. So I think that from my point of view, it sounds like worthwhile at least to start the research.
Yeah, and I think another way that some of the listeners can engage with Algolia, the IronPlane team knows Algolia, is doing an Algolia implementation right now as we speak, and you already have a knowledge base. I think as a trusted advisor, outside of a sales team trying to sell something, you absolutely have an opinion there at IronPlane. And something I'll offer to the listeners, if you believe that you have search challenges, but you're not sure what they are, we're happy to come in and do a heuristic audit of your site, take a look, compare it to your peers and best practices, and come back with a point of view. We will typically follow up that, what we call a search audit, if you're interested, with an ROI calculation. So if you give us read-only access to your analytics tool, whether that's GA or something else, or we can tell you the data that we need, we can combine what we saw in the heuristic search audit with some of the data and help you come up with your ROI model and your TCO analysis, both of which are important to making these decisions.
Even better.
And the IronPlane team, we need to actually enable you all to do some of these search audits as well. So we should do that in the future.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you very much for your time. I appreciate you being on the show today. And we're going to probably build out a case study for our client who we're just about to launch on Algolia. And we'll probably do a little video about that as well. So we're really looking forward to working with you in the future, and appreciate you taking the time to talk with us about the platform today.
Well, thank you, Tim. And I'm excited about the next time we talk as well. See you soon.
All right, take care.
For more insights on how to improve your e-commerce website and for a free consultation, visit ironplane.com. Follow us on social media and like and subscribe below.